Good evening, everyone. Welcome to meeting of New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association. Today is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. My name is Jaracz, and we are going to start right now. Today, we will talk about what's new and about the Electric Vehicle Association in general. We are expecting lots of new audience today. And the reason is because we have very special guest today. We will have Pamela Frank, CEO of ChargEVC, and she's going to talk about the electric vehicle policy in New Jersey. And then we will talk about member survey of New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association. If you would like to go through the deck at your own pace, please feel free to scan the QR code to access this deck, and you can go back and forth. So, speaking of the chair report, I just want to remind everyone that now is the time to register for Drive Electric Earth Month, which is the rebranded Drive Electric Earth Day. And it's important to get the event registered preferably by the end of the February, and then ask for the gears and swag by March 6. March 6 is the deadline. Our first event will be Trenton Computer Festival on March 16th. Then we will have Earth Day at Canal Walk in Franklin on April 19th. Wild Earth Fest at Science Center Mountain Sign on April 28th. Earth Day Fair in Highland Park on May 5th, and Glen Ridge Arts and Eco Fair on Saturday, May 18th. We expect that many more events will be registered, so please do not hesitate and go ahead. We also wanted to report that the National EVA has launched a campaign to tell that anti-EV dealers that they don't speak for you, because they launched anti-EV campaign urging President Biden to loosen up the rules, the emission rules. We actually already heard complaint from New Jersey Coalition of Automotive Retailers, which only signifies that we are a partner to deal with. We also want to remind you that if you're employed and your employer is interested, that they should sign a plea to implement workplace charging and get certified for free at evalcertification.org. The free deal is only until mid-October this year. Fourth, had an interesting webinar today about accelerating EV used market. And we learned that there are actually two online resources to buy used electric vehicle. And they both apparently offer the federal tax credit for used vehicles to be applied at point of purchase. So this is very interesting. Last time we were discussing that starting from January 1st, 2024, the rules for federal tax credit have changed, and you can take the federal tax credit at point of purchase as long as the dealer where you're buying your electric vehicle has registered with IRS so that they can actually transfer the credit on you. And the great advantage is that you don't need to have the liability in the amount of the actual federal tax credit, but still some other conditions apply, particularly about income. And as usual, I want to remind everyone to check our calendar that is linked to our Gmail, newjerseyeva@gmail.com. I would like to also, before we get to our featured speaker, I would like to talk about Electric Vehicle Association. Our mission is to educate and advocate for rapid adoption of electric vehicles. The Electric Vehicle Association, formerly as an Electric Auto Association, it was founded actually in 1967, a long time ago.
Wow.
At that time, reasons to form the association were different than today. At that time, the society experienced oil shortage. So that was the reason why lots of people started converting their vehicles into electric, and some companies even started making electric vehicle options. So we are the North America's largest and leading nonprofit that accelerates the adoption of electric vehicles, and there are over 100 chapters actually nationwide, and there are thousands of members, and we educate in their communities about the benefits of driving electric. We are involved in countless initiatives and projects throughout the US, and our national team coordinates and amplifies many of them for the public to see and experience. Now, what specifically New Jersey Electric Vehicle is doing, we are organizing electric vehicle shows, electric vehicle presentations, virtual or in person. We also help first responders to understand electric vehicles. We have collaborations across many stakeholders, including transportation management associations, other nonprofits, municipalities, and state agencies. We provide testimony at state hearings. We have monthly virtual meetings such as this one, and it's available for public and it's recorded. We have all recorded meetings on our YouTube channel. We are supporting colleges in development of electric vehicle curriculum, for example, Raritan Valley Community College. And we are advocating for workplace charging. We share success electric vehicle stories. And we have pretty good social media presence on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. There are many benefits of membership of Electric Vehicle Association, not just New Jersey, and some benefits are linked to the chapter, some to individual. Among the chapter benefits are actually this Zoom portal is actually business level Zoom, and that's paid by the national. We have leadership meetings that helps us get connected with others, liability insurance for our events. We have revenue share, which means that for every member who joins Electric Vehicle Association as associated with our chapter, we receive portion of the fee and we can use it at our discretion. We have sponsored events. We have access to MailChimp. That MailChimp has a list of 25,000 subscribers. And we have all the data analytics associated with MailChimp. We can see how our campaigns are doing, how many people clicked links, which links were most popular, etc. We can arrange for joint chapter meetings, and we receive chapter gears, flags, tablecloth, banners, and that helps to increase impact of our events in our communities. As for the individual benefits, there are benefits such as discounted charging Blue Dot card, NeoCharge Smart Splitter discount, recurrent battery report, which helps you to understand the battery health of your electric vehicle. That is for free because you are a member. Clean Energy Credit Union to receive loan for energy efficient projects. Reimbursement for Drive Electric Earth Month and National Drive Electric Week events. We have special member events, members only events, fully charged live discounts, and also individual gears, polo shirts, hats, lanyards, pins, window stickers. So if you would like to join, please visit myeva.org, hit the join button, and select sign up today. And make sure that in the process, you select New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association as the chapter that you would like to join. The membership starts at $55 per year, and it includes this is the basic membership. We have also discounted membership for youth, and for students, it's free. There are also higher tiers if you would like to support EVA at higher tiers. So now I would like to introduce our featured speaker, very, very special speaker indeed, Pamela Frank. She's the CEO of ChargEVC. ChargEVC is a coalition of many stakeholders within New Jersey. And Pam, feel free to tell us more. But I also would like to mention that Pam, she's also um, Senior Vice President at Gable Associates. And so this is an organization that involves solar, wind, and electric vehicles. Everything about sustainability. Um, and Pam is also executive board member at Plug-in America. So, and she's volunteer with Environment America. So, lots of things going on. Pam is really well known and the person to go to if you would like to make change in the field of sustainability and specifically electric vehicles. So, Pam, take it from here. I just want to make sure that I give you um, access.
It's okay because I'm just going to speak. I'm not going to put up pretty pictures today.
Oh, so Pam, take it from here.
So thanks, Dan. It is a pleasure to be with everybody. And I feel like I should introduce myself by saying I'm a driver of a 2017 Chevy Bolt that's got about 120,000 miles on it. And at about 90,000 miles, I got a new battery courtesy of GM. So car's been doing great. Did just have to replace my 12-volt battery. But other than that, it's been a really phenomenal experience. I'd probably be inclined to keep the car much longer if I wasn't limited to 50 kilowatts for my power for my charging. And it looks like my next car, I think, is going to be a Countryman EV, the 2025 one that has a nice range of about 250. So I feel like that's sort of the entry ticket to groups like this. You need to kind of identify what you drive. Um, I wanted to spend some time and leave some time also for questions. You guys are the drivers. And Stan, it kind of reminds me just hearing about everything you guys are doing, which is really impressive. Just how we need to just figure out how to make sure we are linked, I think, better than we are, just in terms of the events even that you're having. I want to be able to tell all of our members that that stuff is going on. So we'll schedule a call to make sure we're just linking in all the ways that are going to help us. Um, there were really three things I wanted to talk about today briefly that are sort of top of mind for ChargEVC. Before I do, I'll just tell you a little quick origin story about the organization, which will help you understand how we work. Um, I started my career many years ago in not-for-profit doing community organizing, and I feel like that at the end of the day is where my heart is. Um, Somewhere along the way, I got very involved around 1992 in climate science and exposed to that, and just for some reason I don't understand, kind of galvanized my interest, and my career kind of ever since then has really been organized around the principle of trying to figure out how I can contribute to rapidly reducing emissions. Um, I joined Gable Associates, which is a consulting practice that, as Stan said, focuses on a lot of things near and dear to my heart when it comes to reducing emissions. And in about 2015, a number of us at the firm that are always interested in helping to create new markets for the things we care about. Many of us had been involved in solar years ago in the creation of that market in New Jersey. It seemed in 2015, for reasons everyone here knows, that we were about to see some really interesting things in EV because we had mainstream vehicles that were scheduled to come into the market. At 2015, we knew about the Tesla Model 3, the next gen Leaf, and the Bolt, and all getting about 250 miles to the charge, all priced around $35,000. Boy, that seems like a long time ago. And we thought, okay, I think the market is going to be arriving. We ought to start figuring out how to help accelerate this market. And again, from my community organizing background, that points to best way to influence policies, change laws, influence regulations. Best way to do that, or at least how I was schooled, was get as many interests as you can aligned saying the same thing to the policymakers and lawmakers, make it really dumb, simple, easy for them on the politics. If you can get so many people to agree, they're going to have a hard time saying no. And so that was the organizing principle behind ChargEVC. And we set about spending about a year with my Gable hat, trying to figure out what we should do. And quite frankly, I took a lot of my cues from Jeff Allen out at Fourth, which was then called Drive Oregon, because I really liked his model, which was a C6 organization, not-for-profit business association. So we were born in 2016. Gable created this entity. It's independent. We handed it off. It has 3 separate officers. Gable has a management contract with it, and we provided all of its technical support and administrative support. When there's analytical activities, we do that as well. So that's the linkage there. It also means that I work and spend probably about 40 to 50% of my time thinking about EVs, and the other 40 to 50% of my time doing other related sustainability types of projects like wind and solar and storage and grid mod and stuff like that. So that's a little bit of a quick background. The 3 things I wanted to focus your attention on today, you guys, again, being the drivers and having a very unique voice, potentially also for our policy and lawmakers, is, first of all, I think 2024, finally, after so many years of thinking about this, is saying it, finally, folks, I think we have arrived at the year of the EV, meaning there are going to be dozens of new makes and models introduced that are going to fit, customers. Again, they're still pricey. We understand that. The cost of new cars generally has crept up higher and higher. But the variety of models coming into the market is really breathtaking. Really exciting year. More to come on this, but we are hoping to organize a very large statewide electric vehicle show in the fall at the American Dream Mall. So that's at the very beginning stages of being organized, but more to come on that as plans kind of cement. And this means, I think, just the opportunity. You guys educate and advocate. So I think it just means there's just going to be a greater opportunity to show folks more stuff. And we know how important it is to get people excited about the technology. And now they're just going to have more to see. So to state the obvious, which I think you're probably all aware of, this is going to be a big year for the EV industry. The second thing I wanted to focus on was something that a law that we worked really, really hard on getting enacted established a fund to provide rebates for these electric vehicles. And maybe some of you on this call actually got a rebate from the state of New Jersey. When the first program opened 3 or 4 years ago, I think those rebates were about $5,000. They've moved down, I think about $4,000. They've got some tiers to them now, which the BPU, Board of Public Utilities, who administers the program, introduced. But here's the problem with it. The language that created this program said at least $30 million a year for 10 years. So that's $300 million, a minimum of $30 million a year. And ever since the program has been established, the BPU has shown absolutely no interest in entertaining the idea that they should be resourcing this program more than $30 million each year, which, by the way, would make good sense given the state and the laws that say we want to get to 330,000 EVs by 2025 require an increasing amount of EVs sold year over year. I know I'm stating the obvious to you all, but when it comes to our policy folks, there seems to be a real big disconnect and an unwillingness to increase the budgets. We've never pretended that the rebates were going to be available for everyone who wanted to buy an EV. In fact, there is an MSRP cutoff of $55,000 that virtually guarantees, given the pricing of these cars, that not everybody who buys an EV is going to be able to get themselves a New Jersey rebate. But they have been extraordinarily stubborn on this point. And so we have legislation that we're waiting to have introduced to basically increase that fund to appropriate levels so we have a shot at getting to our goals. And we do have a shot of getting to our goals. But as you all know, pricing on these vehicles runs about $10,000 to $15,000 $10,000 to $15,000 higher than equivalent ICE engine models. And we need to bridge that gap. It is true that we have no sales tax, which is a very big deal. It's also not well known in the state. And people really do gravitate to cash on the hood rebates. So I want to be clear to all of you as advocates, to the extent you're talking with your legislators, you really need to make it clear that there is really great bang for the buck in providing these kinds of rebates. The program opens every year in mid-July because we have a budget in New Jersey that goes from end of June to beginning of July. So every year mid-July, that $30 million comes into the pot, and every year it disappears that much faster. This year, I think by mid-September or October. No, that's too soon. I'm sorry. I think this year the fund was exhausted by the end of October, beginning of November. The demand is there, and we need to be resourcing it properly. So if any of you are interested, if any of you have relationships with legislators, especially legislative leadership, if you know people that do, you know, Stan knows all the ways to get us. And we're waiting for the right timing to introduce this. Senator Smith on the Senate Environment and Energy Committee is a big supporter, but I'll tell you right now, the politics are tough. Some people have a real, some people, meaning some folks in the legislature, have a real issue with the concept of giving ratepayer dollars to people to buy cars that they consider luxury vehicles. And that there's a point to that. It's just if you do a big cost benefit analysis, it really seems to make quite a bit of sense. Never mind, and this is lost on a lot of folks, but taking a car with a tailpipe off the road and essentially having the private sector purchaser make the majority, the vast majority of that investment is a good deal for the state of New Jersey. It's a great leverage of the public dollar. The specific sort, I'm just responding in real time to some of the questions that I'm seeing. The specific source of the fund in New Jersey are the ratepayers, as Alex Brown answered properly. It comes from the Clean Energy Fund, which is a surcharge that every ratepayer in New Jersey pays, and it goes into something called the Clean Energy Fund. The little dirty secret about the Clean Energy Fund, it generates about $500 million a year, is we never spend all of the money. So you can look at that budget. It's probably one of the best known secrets. And if I tell you this, your hair should stand on edge. I think there's 3 or 4 people at the end of the day that decide how $500 million is going to be spent. And what I mean by that is, sure, they get ratepayer, I'm sure they get stakeholder input on that, but they're not required to do any kind of review or analysis in the way that a utility who wants to spend ratepayer dollars is required to do. There's no standard for them. They basically put a budget out there, they say, give us your reactions, and then they do what they do. So I hope that bothers some of you. It's bothered me for years. It's a lot of money, and it's in control of very few people. The third issue I want to raise is the issue of medium and heavy duty vehicles and that segment, which is crucially important in New Jersey in terms of carbon emissions, but also more importantly, when you're displacing diesel, particulate matter, which is a major health harming emission. Particulate matter, 2.5 microns to be exact, which lodges in people's lungs, developing children, and like they always like to say, the most unhealthy place in New Jersey for a child is on the back of a school bus. So that's how they're getting exposed. What I want to draw to your attention on medium heavy duty is, right now, it seems abundantly clear that the market for medium duty electric vehicles, and I'm sure you've seen the Amazon vehicles in your neighborhood with no tailpipe. So there's a bunch of electric medium duty vehicles that are running around the state. They're almost at price parity today with their IC engine counterparts. And the thing that is holding up adoption of these vehicles is, and I wonder if anybody would venture a guess on what you think the holdup is, it's the grid. and the ability for the grid to be able to fuel fleets of these vehicles, whether it's wait times of 18 months, whether it's costs of $10 million to build a new substation. It could be, death by 1,000 cuts. This is simply now a choke point. And so now, not yet for residential applications. I could talk about that kind of in another talk, but we don't really have to worry too much. For instance, my neighborhood, updating transformers, that's kind of in the normal course of business for a utility. And we're not going to see real difficult impacts till we get to about 10% penetration. Although residentially speaking, the uptake on electric vehicles will tend to cluster in neighborhoods. But that's, we believe, pretty addressable by the utility given their current models and the updates they do on a routine basis. The bigger issue is what's holding back medium heavy duty and fleet adoption. And the utilities in particular need to file before the Board of Public Utilities in order to spend ratepayer dollars and make these kinds of investments and get their guaranteed rate of return. And the BPU said maybe now 3 years ago, I think maybe even longer, that we would be getting to medium heavy duty, and they wanted to use a specific process they decided to use. Bottom line is, folks, we've been waiting for 2 years for that process, where the Board of Public Utilities said they wanted to issue something called a minimum filing requirement board order that would require the utilities to come in and make filings and do, at a minimum, a number of things that the board says. They spent a lot of time, several years now, getting stakeholder input, putting out straw proposals, only to discover, per their own attorneys, they can't use that process. So now we are 2 years behind for a process that was self-imposed by them. And we are waiting to see what they do next. And they've had this information and known this for 6 to 8 months, and we've seen no action. So as you can tell by my tone, I'm more than a little frustrated about this, because again, a lot of these bottlenecks in this instance were self-imposed by the regulatory agency. What we really want the board to do is to clearly say publicly, the process we were relying on, we can no longer pursue, and we invite and we encourage the utilities to come in and make filings. As you may or may not know, when utilities come in and make filings, it's a quasi-judicial process up there at the board. There's entities that are allowed to intervene. There is discovery. There is lots of information that the staff can learn in order to ultimately, at the end of the day, make their recommendations to the board that ultimately votes on whether or not to accept a filing or to accept a settlement if parties get together and settle, which is usually the case. This takes a while. It's a process that can go on for 6 to 9 to 18 months, and we haven't even started. And what I'm most concerned about is that our board will announce soon that they want to start a rulemaking process for medium heavy duty. And that will in effect kind of freeze out any utilities from making filings, because they'll want to understand what the rules look like at the end of the day. It's a strange time we're in at the moment, and one that I find especially frustrating, because the one thing we do not have is time. Let me pause there, because I just threw a lot at you. Actually, let me throw one more thing before I open it up for any questions or discussions. And that is, there's 2 related issues going on when it comes to the grid. One is what we call, or what policy folks like to call, grid modernization. I have no idea what that means, because it can mean a million different things. To most people, when they think about it, they think, get our grid ready to do all kinds of things it's never done before, be resilient like it's never been before, accommodate two-way feeds like it's never done before, use information overlay like it's never done before, et cetera, et cetera. But that is a hot topic right now, grid modernization. The other very strategic technology in enabling us to reach our clean energy goals not just the proliferation of electric vehicles, is battery storage or storage. I don't even need to necessarily say battery storage, storage. Reliable, inexpensive storage that can smooth out the curves of renewables, that can store, that can accommodate or maybe even mitigate some of the wait times for customers that may want to electrify fleets. Because if you put a battery behind the meter, then maybe all of a sudden you don't have to spend $10 million for grid upgrades. You can spend $1 million for grid upgrades because you're going to prevent, you're not going to push as much electricity through their pipes because you're going to be relying on a battery. So I just said a lot. Now I'm going to be quiet and open it up for any questions or conversation.
Pam, thank you so much. That was awesome. I have a few points that I would like to ask. I'll actually take advantage. I'll be the first, and then we'll go to the chat. You mentioned that the funding from ratepayers is the budget is 500 million per year. You said
The Clean Energy Fund, they generate
right?
about half a billion dollars a
Half
year.
of that's a lot of money. And you mentioned that it never gets really spent. So what is happening with the excess?
Yes. So the excess, so it's a great question. In terms of sometimes, as an example, one example is that some of those monies, some of the programs at the Board of Public Utilities, for instance, programs for energy efficiency upgrades, right? They may have those funds committed in 2024, but they may not be called upon until 2025. So they carry money over that's already been committed, but not necessarily spent. That's kind of one flavor of how things can go. Another flavor of how things can go is, I'll give you the example of storage, which bothers me a lot. For the last 3 years, our clean energy budget has had a line item of $20 million. They haven't done anything with it in 3 years. So every year they kick it forward and say, all right, we're going to put that in again. And that 20 million that was in the prior year budget, usually it gets allocated to another program because they'll do a mid-year adjustment of the budget depending on how the programs are going. Or to be frank about it, Stan, I'm not exactly sure what happens to it because I'm not sure that anybody has done a real close track of exactly how every dollar that's not spent in the fiscal year in which it was generated is carried over or isn't carried over or gets somehow put into the general fund. Every year,
some of it goes to NJ Transit, right?
So every year they do. The environmental community has been for years campaigning against the raids. They use that term very deliberately. The raids in the clean energy budget, where some of that money gets put into the general fund. And for the last, it's been a while. I think it even went on under Chris Christie. That money was used for transit, or it went to pay the electric bills of the state. I mean, and sometimes it wasn't clear where the money was going. But in the last several years, it's been going to transit, supposedly with the purpose of aiding in their electrification strategies. But again, tracking this money is challenging.
Good, thank you. You also mentioned that in your third point that the proliferation of the medium duty is held by the grid. And I am now a little bit into the electrification medium duty. Do you think that it could be part of the problem is that whoever is electrifying fleet, they tend to upsize their charging need and they want to have DC fast charging station, and that put things throw out of the window, that now they need to have huge transformers and get ready for huge spikes in demand. But in effect, these are just spikes, because overall they are not going to use as much energy. And then when they electrify, they will be complaining, oh, we are paying a lot for electricity. Well, guess why? Because you have spikes, and in overall you are not using that much of energy. What do you think?
Okay, so you said a lot, Stan. There's a lot in that question.
It's a low demand fee I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a few things in there. First of all, the utilities say rightly that if a fleet customer wants to consider electrification, the very first thing they should do before they order any vehicles, before they buy equipment, before they run numbers, is pick up the phone and call the utility and say to the utility, we're thinking about doing this. Because to your point, specific duty cycles of vehicles require specific strategies for charging. The more we can push the charging to the times of less demand on the grid, which is at night, right, the better off we'll be. The lower power we can be using, right, the better off we'll be. And when I say we, I mean the society we, like the big,
Right.
for the grid, for the system, right? And very often, I mean, and people kind of know this to be, you all know this to be true, which is most of us, unless we're part of the high milers club, only drive about 40 miles a day, if that. I don't even do that anymore because I work a lot of the time from my home office, right? But if most of us are driving 40 miles a day and we're neurotic and feel like every day when we pull our car out, we need to pull our car out with a full charge, that means I've got roughly 10 hours overnight to the utility to get me those 40 miles back, right? That's giving the utility a lot of flexibility, or a third party operator, if it's not the utility, a lot of flexibility in how that charge is happening, right? It could be kind of like Oz in the back of the curtain there. And so part of the answer to your question is, besides talking to the utility early on so these folks can get educated about what they really need, there's also a number of strategies the state needs to make available to customers that help mitigate demand spikes. Now, some of that may be price signals, some of that may be behavior, incentives around behavior that are different than price. Some of that may be technology, like battery storage, right? Some of that may be control systems. There's probably a dozen or so known strategies for how to deal with demand spikes that are going to help the grid and ultimately help the customer. First of all, we don't have all of those approved. We have a few things we've been tinkering with, but we really haven't gone sort of full bore on that yet. Not that we necessarily need to at this stage in the market, but we need to start developing these solutions and slowly be rolling them out to make them available. And when I said behavior, not price signals, just as a really kind of interesting tidbit, years ago, a colleague of mine was assessing different demand management strategies. And they found in one particular utility territory, I don't remember where it was in the country, that one of the things that worked the best was radio announcements that basically came on and told people, hey, high demand, please do your part, turn stuff down or off. And that sort of simple, low tech, announcement did better than anything else they had out there. So I don't want to discount solutions that can be rather simple and lower tech, but we need all of them to be able to manage demand.
Yeah. And I agree with you that energy storage is very important. I did my analysis for the fleet transition that is happening now. And well, it's only planned in Easy Ride. And I figure that if I want to propose something affordable, then it's much better to come up with level 2 charger, right? Because it's just pass-through device. The actual onboard charger is already prepaid with the vehicle, and scatter the load so that you never have spike and you kind of flatten the peak. And the utility should should thank us, and we did have first meeting. And I told them, if you guys give us the deal that between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., if you give us a great deal for charging elsewhere, we cannot charge between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. if you wish. And you know what they said? Well, it's a standard LL whatever, they have abbreviation for the pricing tier, and so there is a peak and off peak, but the peak is not truly matching what is the actual stress that the grid is experiencing between 4, 5 and 8 p.m. or something like that. It starts at 7 a.m. or something like that until 9 p.m. So I told him, okay, fine, we'll just do whatever we want, but unless, of course, if we can delay the charging until after the cutoff between on peak and off peak, then yes. But yeah, so okay, I think I spoke a lot. Now, who else has questions? So I have seen, who was it? There was a question about Colorado Fund. So they have they have also cash for clunkers, and cash for clunkers is well known. And I just say my opinion. I think it's important in the last phase because as we adopt electric vehicles, the old gas cars always find some new owner. But when the last adopters, the laggers, they need to buy electric, nobody will be willing to buy their old car. So anyway, Pam, what do you think?
Oh, I love that question because it was a hotly debated topic in our membership years ago, and it still comes up occasionally. And I think I've settled kind of comfortably in the place where I would say right now, first of all, we don't even have enough resources to provide incentives for new cars to even get to the goals we have laid out for ourselves in the state of New Jersey. That is 330,000 registered electric vehicles by the end of 2025. Like, we need to focus sort of on that and get there first. And then maybe we can think about tinkering with other things. But the essential issue, Stan, is something I think you just uncovered, which is every dollar that we spend on a used EV, we need to put out new EVs on the road to feed a used EV market, right? And in some markets, when you've looked at, well, what is the impact of a rebate for a used EV been? In some markets, it's had the adverse impact of actually raising prices for used EVs. Now I know, and you said this, you made this point in the IRA, you're now able to get tax credits for the purchase of a used EV as long as you're going through dealer networks. And, that was part of the issue that was worked out in the law. And you can understand why they were doing that. They needed to control in some way, because you could have turned this into just horrible gaming between individual consumers that were trying to, really milk this. And they wanted the dealers to have this. So I think there could be some measure of control. I also think it was a way to help dealers get on board. But right now, as a matter of state policy that I'll differentiate from federal policy, I would not be advocating a cash for used EVs. There's another question that comes into play about, well, what about the most offending vehicles, the dirtiest vehicles that are on the road? Do you want to do a cash for clunkers program? Because that's been pretty effective in other markets. That's an interesting idea. Again, my concern about that is, where's our funding coming from for that? Is that something that could be done through the Department of Environmental Protection and some of its settlement funds? That's, I think, a more interesting thing to think about a little bit more. It also reminds me of a bill that it's been introduced and it will get a hearing. And it could be extraordinarily impactful for generating millions of dollars a year that could go to this market. And that is something called the low carbon fuel standard, although I think they're calling it something a little bit different. The essential basic idea there is we already tax carbon emissions on New Jersey power generators. And that's through RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas, I forgot what the I stands for, but RGGI. It's a 13-state compact, and we generate about
Initiative is the I.
initiative. Thank you. We probably generate about 120,000 a year, 120 million a year, rather, under that program, under RGGI. If you recall, Christie took us out of it. Murphy put us back into it. So we've got that money coming. We've been spending that money on a lot of good electrification initiatives. Now, with low carbon fuel standard, we're talking about, okay, we've taxed the carbon emissions related to power generation in the state. What about taxing the carbon emissions related to transportation fuels in the state?
Finally.
A big transportation market in New Jersey. This could be a game changer. It's going to be a very big conversation in the state. I have no idea what its chances are, but you should all be aware of it, because the game there is the gas industry is just going to call the gas tax, the petroleum folks to fight it. They're just going to say it's a gas tax, and they're going to fight it like they usually do. The overburdened communities or environmental justice communities aren't going to like it, because they just don't like market-based solutions generally. Although we think that one of the ways to win the day here is to try to say, fine, all the revenue that gets raised under stuff like this should go to decarbonize transportation in the communities that suffer the disproportionate effects. So I don't know what the disposition of this is going to be. And is like anything that's this complicated, the devil's going to be in the details.
I think this is awesome. Is it just considered in New Jersey, or is it also other states are considering this?
There's a few other states. Don't ask me what they are, because I won't be able to rattle them off the top of my head. But I will say that New Jersey is the one where a lot of national folks are targeting and putting money into trying to get this done, because our transportation market is so huge. I mean, the largest transportation market, in the country is right around Secaucus. When you just look at number of cars and traffic, and that's it. It's ground zero right there. So
well, we are the most densely populated state. The other day, I was making various calculations about the EV adoption, and I found that if you consider EV adoption per square mile, we are number one. California is after us. So that's interesting. Of course, that's not how you calculate EV adoption, because you do it per capita, right? But yeah.
I know. We think, look, the thing that matters ultimately at the end of the day, and what I try to focus on all the time, is we got 6 million or so light duty vehicles on the road. We want to just clean them all up, right? And how do we do that quickly? How do we get them dirty ones off the road and replace them with things with no tailpipes? Easier said than done.
Well, to this point, I also have another question. So, and I've heard this, that it's in talks in Colorado, and they call it super user kind of focus. Essentially, you have a relatively small percentage of drivers who are responsible for a huge chunk of pollution. And if we can focus on incentivizing those people and making them change to electric, we get big impact. It's not like, seniors who drive few miles a day, you get them electric, and so what, right?
So the issue there, so I've seen those statistics, and they're really interesting and compelling. Again, part of my issue is, from a policy perspective, it's a tough one. You could take someone who's a super user. By the way, they tend to be disproportionately poorer households, right? So there's an affordability problem, as someone in the chat also just pointed out. I think it was Dennis, rightly pointed out. Even if you provide some sort of cash for clunkers, it's an affordability issue. How's that person necessarily going to turn around and buy a $50,000 new car? They're not, right? You could provide, and this is where I think we have to get creative. There was I think it was in Europe. It was in Europe. I can't remember where. I think maybe it was France, that did a program with its utility where it basically provided people with an income less than a certain amount for very affordable EV leasing options. And it was done through the utility. And it, of course, was wildly successful, and they had to shut it down because they ran out of funds, right? But providing options for, again, cash for clunkers and people who drive long miles, that's kind of one issue. And how do you help them get into an EV affordably, whether it's used EVs or new EVs with lots of subsidies or different ownership models like leasing or car sharing. There's also other models. We were involved in Go Trenton, which if any of you go to Trenton, please, you can download the app. When you get off the train station, you can hail an electric ride anywhere in the footprint of Trenton. And that's it's operated through ISLES, which is a community development organization. And it's trying to solve the problem of affordable transportation to the people of Trenton that have to take a taxi cab to go to a grocery store. I live next to Trenton in Lawrenceville, and it's something I routinely see, and it's terrible. But now with these vehicles, it's $1 a ride. It's very affordable. And they also have got partnerships with places like Amazon that are out in the burbs a bit, where they can be providing rides to big employers. So these types of solutions that augment public transit and the deficiencies that are inherent in public transit are also really important to stand up. And the models, the business models behind them are becoming possible because of electrification as the fuel. It just opens up a whole bunch of interesting business models. The Go Trenton is one great example of that.
What do we know about these super users? Are they like Uber drivers, or like what is it that they're like, you know, what is it that they're doing that makes them drive so much?
That's a really interesting question. So Stan, if you don't have the deck, I do, and you can probably circulate it to your group, a couple of slides about what Cultura, who ran this study and analysis, what they found in New Jersey in terms of the numbers. But to go deeper and figure out like what are the particular characteristics of the drivers, I don't know that I saw that information. It's an interesting question. I do know people in my life that I've come across that tell me they commute an hour and a half each way. We do come across people like that occasionally.
Do you have you mentioned you're talking about some deck or?
Yeah, so I can forward you, Stan, from Cultura. They actually just sent an email around. I'll make sure I send it to you, and you can download from there the specific New Jersey information and pass it around this group.
Okay, good. Because I came across the concept of the super users from Cultura, but I do not recall anything specific about New Jersey. That's probably a new report.
Yeah, it is. And my fear about that one is that policymakers will do what policymakers like to do, right? They always love sort of perfect policy. The problem is in the real world, it's really hard to target drivers like that, number one. Number two, it's not clear to me that a driver's status would remain through time. And if you're providing big chunks of money and then they decide to take a different job or they relocate, what does that mean? I mean, the policymakers will drive themselves crazy trying to come up with exceptions to every rule they carve out. When again, we just got to focus on getting to our goal of 330,000 EVs.
I got actually an idea some time ago. Now I recall it back. Is it possible to incentivize employers to preferably hire local people? And if they hire someone who is a longer distance than certain threshold, they have to actually put in charging station in workplace. And there would be formula that can calculate that the further you go, the more charging you hire employee who travels a lot, the more robust the charging station has to be.
So that's a great example, Stan, of you're solving one issue on the one hand, but on the other hand, you may be creating another issue that could be avoided, which is workplace charging is a great solution for people that don't have convenient, routine access to overnight charging, right? But what if you're doing that and instead of charging at home, which let's say the employee could do at home at night, they're charging at work for free during the day.
Okay, so it should not be entirely free because you need to regulate.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something that the state hasn't been willing to get involved in. And that would cause, oh my gosh, that would cause a big uproar. Because what employers want to be able to do is they want to be able to think about these things as maybe a benefit. So it's pretty complicated because on the one hand, yeah, it would be kind of cool to attract talent by saying, come work here, we'll give you free juice every day. I know folks that have considered doing that. And that's fine, like early in the market, but you can imagine how that gets to be an issue. I have a real big issue with anything free. It's just never a good idea. But we've seen this. We've seen this. So there's chargers at shopping centers, right? That will provide you free charging.
It's the Volta system, right?
Yeah. And big advertisements on them, and
Right.
that's how
Right.
they figured
That's
that.
how it is paid for.
Yeah, which is a really interesting model. I just don't like the free.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you. I remember when I was at Colgate, there was a guy who got the used leaf, and he's the privilege that he can charge at home, right? But because it was free, he would charge at work, and then he was laid off, and he was like, "I don't like the car," and I was like, "Are you serious? Because now you have to charge at home. You are putting your vehicle at fault." Well, the good story is that he actually changed his mind, and he eventually, and he maybe he still keeps the vehicle, I don't know. But at that time I felt like no, 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 it's bad idea to have free charging. Besides, we had to always chase people away from the charging spot, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing. People, employers today, they have absolutely no idea how to do the workplace charging. They do it in the electrician way, right? Well, you want to have charging stations? Okay, give me the alley, and I'm going to fill every spot with charging station, right? But then, somebody, employee will come, they will plug it in, and the vehicle could be charged in an hour or two.
Yeah. There's
You think that they will go out and they will move the vehicle?
Yeah, it opens up
Uh,
a whole host of issues around
it's much
enforcement.
better to have one charging spot surrounded by 4 spots, and then you are breaking the 8-hour working time into 4 segments, and you are just swapping the cord. You don't ask people to leave. You just need one person always to change from vehicle 1 to vehicle 2 around 10 a.m., then around noon from 2 to 3.
Or I should say, to make it really easy, you have 4 plugs. They go in, and then they're
Yeah,
just activated.
well, but I'm trying to even go to the level of saving money on the courts, right? So then you have someone from security who will always do it like it's essentially 3 times during the business time: 10 a.m., noon, and 2 p.m. If
Mhm.
we are talking about typical working time, right?
I
So
see there's somebody, Mario, I can't see, or is it Maria? No, Mario
Mario.
has a hand
Yeah,
raised. Where are you?
yeah. Pam, I have a question. It seems that our utilities here in New Jersey don't really have a lot of programs to help shave demand. For example, I have JCP&L, and they don't offer a demand response program,
Right.
right? They have an EV. They don't really have an EV only rate. They have time of use. And
Mhm.
also, they don't have any incentives at all for battery storage, right? So I know you touched a little bit on the DPU, but why do I feel that New Jersey is so much behind other states like Massachusetts, California, Maine?
So Mario, we are. And I'll say something, don't quote me on this, please, but between us here, this administration has been really good when it comes to goals, and not so great when it comes to implementation on things. I mean, offshore wind was a really important thing, and some of the other areas, shall I say, just suffered from lack of attention. And I think the EV policies in the state have just been, this just hasn't been a priority, to be frank about it. And you see that in where we are. We are woefully behind other states, and you're right to point it out. And it's important. And, you know, this is just now politics, right? We've got a governor who has 18 or so months left in his administration. Now's the time, and his wife's running for Senate, right? So that's a potential leverage point, right? Now is the time to start ratcheting up the volume and the criticism and the pressure on getting where we need to be. It's one thing to set goals. It's one thing to enact laws. It's another thing to the minutia of governing and regulation, not for the faint of heart. This administration just hasn't been as hands-on as I've seen other administrations. I mean, I'll say this, and I've said it before. The Christie administration had a lot of issues when it came to renewable energy I disagreed with a lot and strongly. But I will say this about them. When they said they were going to do something, they did it. They executed. This administration has really struggled, I think, in areas when it comes to execution. And I think the EV area is an arena, right? The other thing I'll say is the utilities can only offer the programs and the incentives that they get approval to offer. And those decisions of what they can offer and how those things get approved happen in small rooms. Now, I don't mean to sound like this is insidious and there's smoky rooms and all, no, but they happen in the context of utility filings. And the only folks that get to influence what happens in those filings are the people in the room, you know, the room where it happened, if you remember your Hamilton musical. The people in the room are interveners, right? That get intervener status and have the money to be able to have the council to represent their interests. And it's a very strategic room to be in if you want to move policy. But first, you got to get the utilities to come in and even make the filings. Utilities are pretty risk averse, generally, right? People forget these are regulated entities. And when a utility gears up for a filing, it's like going to war, right? It's the whole organization that's kind of marshaling for that. So it's not a trivial thing. But this is how we start to see programs in the market. It starts with these filings, and then the folks around the table that influence what those settlements and outcomes will be. It's not a great answer, Mario, but it
is what it is.
It's how stuff gets done.
Yeah. So is it really the BPU not putting the programs together for the utilities to submit proposals? Or is it that utilities really not bothering with it at this moment because they don't see a need? They don't see a...
Yeah, so every utility is in a different place, right? JCP&L, you know what they went through. You know their parent company, First Energy, they're a bit of a mess. Okay. PSE&G, much stronger position, right? Utilities live to make their regulated rate of return. That's what they're in the business to do. If the regulator told them they could make money selling toasters, they'd be selling toasters. So it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game. But in this particular instance, about 5 years ago, the board decided, and actually there was one individual at the board who's not even there anymore, decided to put a process forward where and this is an interesting thing to think about when it comes to how do you get to good policy outcomes. The board said, we want to have the first pen. In other words, we are going to put together this minimum filing requirement in a board order. We're going to listen to all the stakeholders and we're going to ask questions. And then we're going to go into our room and we're going to write out, this is what the utility should come in and file at a minimum. Oh, and actually they went further. They said, not only this is what the utility should file at a minimum, but we don't want them to come in and file A, B, C, D. Now, they did that around light duty vehicles, which is why we have in New Jersey, in all 4 investor-owned utilities, we have programs for public charging for light duty vehicles, public fast charging. We also have residential rebates for, for some of the chargers. We have in PSE territory where I am,
housing, yeah.
We have an EV rate that I can get into, that I get reimbursed 2 cents a kilowatt hour when I charge off peak, right? So all the utilities got approval for different things. That happened under a process that the BPU said was this minimum filing requirement board order. Now think about an alternative reality. Think about the board with stakeholder input that says, what are the problems we're trying to solve? And they put those problems out into the market and say to the utilities, we invite you to come forward with your proposals to solve these problems. That process, in my opinion, having been around this world for a long time, invites a lot more creativity than essentially trying to limit right from the onset what utilities propose. Again, remember, at the end of the day, the board gets to decide what's approved or not approved. Nobody has taken that power away. And the ratepayer advocate by statute is always a party to these filings. So all these protections exist. I see this fundamentally, Mario, to your question, as an issue. It's a very human issue of a need to control when it comes to a regulating agency. And I just think we're in a space where we really don't have the time right now. A lot of the folks that work at the Board of Public Utilities are working long and hard hours, and there's just too much work. There's too much for them to do, right? Why should they be tasked to coming up with what the market needs? They're not even in a position to assess that because they're a regulator. So it's a little, I start with this process from the beginning has been, it's not been a very thoughtful process. And I'm hoping we can have some pressure to change that.
Okay. We are already after the time. I want to have one more question here. Alex, this is maybe a little bit far-fetched. He's saying, from the viewpoint of him being concerned about sustainability and environmental impact, what is the situation with the recycling programs? Are we ready for the exponential increase in electric vehicle sales?
Yeah.
And,
there's a company called New Energy, NU, capital E, Energy. They were actually born out of Princeton University. They're headquartered in New Jersey, in Bordentown. And they built their first factory in Texas. And I offer them as one example of a company that has figured out a way to reclaim the vast majority of the raw earth minerals. Not just basically get them in such condition that they can be used in new applications again. So, the good news about batteries and concerns about mining and concerns about pollution is that technologies exist today to take every kind of battery chemistry that's used and be able to extract and refurbish and I'm not even using the correct terms, but you can extract the component parts and you can prepare them such that they can be sold in the market as new components, right? Which will lessen the mining burden overall. It gets back to trying to create a circular economy.
No, it is essentially recycling.
Exactly right. And the issue there, again, is these companies need to be able to stand up and become profitable. We have to create markets for them. And part of that market creation is going to be the demand that we put. And New Jersey did just get through a battery recycling act that starts to get at this. But it's a very important issue. I'm glad you raised it.
Yeah. Okay. I think we need to wrap up because we appreciate your time and we respect your time. We understand that you have to go maybe other things, but I have a couple more slides about our recent survey. You are more than welcome to stay with us. And by the way, thank you so much for joining us and for telling us more about the EV policy in New Jersey and how it works and how it should work.
And thanks for all the work you guys are doing. And you're reminding me by way of this call that I need to re-up my membership with you guys again. And I just appreciate your enthusiasm here and doing what you do. Feel free to contact me if you have questions and want to sort of take advocacy steps further.
We would definitely like to join you for the big electric vehicle show that you have planned for fall 2024. Where is it, you said?
So we are hoping, actually, we want it to be at the Mall of America. I'm sorry, I say the Mall of America because it's the same developer, American Dream, which is a place where you can actually go skiing. Yes, on the turnpike. But it's actually a perfect venue for a car show, and they've been after us for a while to partner, and we think it'd be a great opportunity.
Do you have a date?
Not yet, but as soon as these elements cement, hopefully within the next month,
Okay.
you will be one of the first to know.
Okay, very good. I've never heard
This
of.
is
Yes?
this is Phil Barnhart from Oregon. I just want to say thank you so much. It was a great presentation, even though your regulatory system is very different from ours. I did get 2 or 3 ideas I think we can use. Thanks.
Oh, Phil. Well, I love the state of Oregon, and you guys have been awesome sauce for everything I've done, quite frankly. Jeff Allen's been a huge inspiration to what we do here. So
it's a home of fourth mobility, isn't it?
it is.
Yep. And Alan has been around for a long time. It's been very instrumental in Oregon.
Yep. Yep.
Are you allowed to pump your own gas in Oregon now? not that it matters to anybody in this session, but
They did change the rule this year. I think most of us I haven't pumped gas in 10 years, but I think most people who do pump gas are sorry that we changed the rules.
yeah.
Well, we need to change it actually here because this is one of the biggest disparities, because pumping gas is so simple. You just pass the credit card and you say 3 magic words, and saying please is optional. Okay. And when you want to get your electric vehicle fast charged, first of all, you don't do it often. Second, because you don't do it often, you forget. And when you want to handle it, oh, it's heavy. You have to align it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why Tesla is so much better. Anyway, end of rant.
You have it. You've got it.
Okay, now, thank you, Pam. Let me take the audience through the rest of the slide deck. And I'm going to skip. I know that you will catch it, but I just don't want to talk about these 2, 3. Okay, here. So few months ago, we fielded survey to our members to find out what is their preferred monthly meeting schedule. And we found out, okay, Tuesday, 2nd or 4th. So that's why we are now aligned with the 2nd Tuesday in the month. We also asked, what are you looking for during the meetings? And we found that, wait a second, this is hidden. The bar is, I am seeing a bar that is preventing me from seeing what's on top. I will have to take a guess. I remember that Mario showed it to me the other day, how to take it off. Anyway, so what are you looking for? So EV-related news, car incentives, overview and look ahead, EV review, tip tricks owning EV, seeking help troubleshoot with your EV. But mostly, so the blue bar, okay, means strongly agree. So information on upcoming EV shows, that's very important. Invited speaker is important. Learning something about our policy outreach and the update, and ability to actively participate answering questions from others. So these are the reasons, and some are more important, some are less. And then also, we had a question to rank how important are following aspects of New Jersey EVA membership for you. And the number one was actually what we are happy to hear is the ability to advocate for electric vehicles under branded organization. We developed the brand of NJEVA. And this is by far the number one. The distant number two is maybe membership freebies and discounts, also monthly virtual meetings, but not so much about networking or career enhancement. And we have also some interesting split about just supporting EVA. So I just thought to mention it, and we are very glad that our members are proud of what we do, and they want to contribute in communities, in their communities, to advocate for electric vehicles. So as I mentioned, our meeting schedule is second Tuesday in the month. Our next meeting will be on March 13th. I'm going to stop the recording now.